Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today's tutorial will be a fun one. We're making the cutest peasanty halter top sundress using the airy mesh and Suzette Stitch. This one is made for fun in the sun. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new, plenty of spring-ready crochet tutorials and patterns are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 530 grams of yarn. That's 950 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. And enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you had to communicate only using movie quotes for a day, which movie would you pick? I would choose Shrek. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this dress started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5.5mm hook, and we're going to start off by making just 1 chain. Now our cups are going to start at a point, so it's going to start exactly the same for everyone, no matter what size we're making. Once we have that 1 chain, then we're going to block off that 1 chain, then chain 2. Now into the chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, we're all going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert in through that 1st chain with 1 half double crochet, into that same 1st chain with a 2nd half double crochet, and into that same chain with a 3rd half double crochet. This is our row 1, and we should all have a total of 3 stitches. Now we are going to make sure that we are all inserting our stitch marker into the beginning of the row. Now this is going to indicate where the bottom of the cup is, because it could be a little confusing once it gets a little bit taller. We have just inserted our stitch marker into the beginning of our row 1. Now we're all going to get started on our row 2, so chain 2 and flip. Now getting started on our row 2, we're going to start with an increase of 4 double crochets into that 1st stitch. So yarn over, into that 1st stitch with 1, same 1st stitch with a 2nd, same 1st stitch with a 3rd, and same 1st stitch with a 4th half double crochet. Now we are going to skip 1 stitch, which is that middle stitch, then into the following an increase of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, skip that 2nd to last, and into the last with 3 half doubles. So insert with 1, into that same with a 2nd, and same with a 3rd. Now our row 2 is complete. We should have a total of 7 stitches so far for row 7. Now we're going to get started on our row 3, so we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now, starting our row 3, we're going to do our Suzette stitches. Now our Suzette stitches is simply 1 single and 1 double crochet into the same stitch. So into the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert with 1 single crochet into that same 1st stitch with a double crochet, and that is our 1st Suzette stitch. Now after every Suzette stitch, we are always going to skip that following stitch from our previous row, because this double crochet counts as that stitch. Then into that next stitch, another Suzette stitch. So insert with another single and another double, and we're just going to continue on with our Suzette stitch until we all have 2 stitches left. So far, since we just did 2 Suzette stitches, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. After that second one, we're going to skip that next, into that next stitch with a single and a double crochet. That should give us a total of 3 Suzette stitches so far for this row, leaving us with 2 stitches. Now we're going to close off our Suzette Stitch row with 1 half double crochet, and we're just closing it off with 1 half double crochet because we aren't increasing into any of our odd number rows. So we're going to skip that second to last stitch, and into the last insert simply with 1 half double crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Now that is our row 3. Now from here, let's get started on a row 4. So we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now for every even number row for this section, we are going to be doing increases. So into that first stitch, we're going to start with an increase of 4 half double crochet. So there's 1, there's 2, into that same first stitch with our third, same first stitch with our fourth. Now after our increase, we're going to do our Suzette stitches until we have that last stitch left. So we are going to skip that following stitch, then into that next stitch, insert with a single and a double crochet, and continue till we have 2 stitches left. So after that Suzette stitch set, we're going to skip 1 stitch into the next with a single and double, and that should leave us with 2 stitches left. And at the end of every even number row, we're going to close it off with an increase of 3 half doubles. So yarn over, skip that second to last, and into that last with 1 half double crochet, into that same last stitch with 1 half double crochet, and into that same last stitch with a third half double crochet. Now our row 4 is complete. Let's just do our following odd number row together again, and then I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. So to get started on our row 5, we're all going to chain 1 and flip. And remember, our odd number rows aren't going to have any increases or decreases. So simply start with our first Suzette stitch, which is 1 single and 1 double into that first stitch. Skip 1 stitch and into the next with another single and double until we have 2 stitches left. Now just as a really quick tip, our Suzette stitch sets are always going to be worked into our previous row's single crochet, which is the lower stitch, just to get the texture that we want. So just to show you guys, since we just finished up a set, we are skipping over that following stitch and into the next, which should be a single crochet from our previous row. We can tell because it is just a little bit shorter. So just insert with a single and a double, and again until we have 2 stitches left. So we're at the end of our row 5. We should all have 2 stitches left, and we're simply going to close it off with 1 half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So far, this is what we should have. The tail end of our cup is going to be at mid-chest, and the bottom is going to sit where our underbust is, so roughly where an underwire would sit. Now, just as a refresher, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows. So every even number row is the row with the increases. We should have 4 more stitches than our previous row. Then every odd number row is just going to be our Suzette stitch with no increases and no decreases. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until this width that we have is roughly from mid-chest, and this width is all the way over to mid-underarm. So this is going to be the width of 1/2 of our front panel. Once we have that completed, I will meet everyone back right after an odd number row, so that we'll be along the top like this. Then we can add a little bit more height to the cup if we need, and then we can finish up with the rest of our underarm together. So we are back. We have just completed the first portion of our cup. Now I have a total of 15 rows. This base width that I have is just about 7 inches or 18 centimeters. And this height that I have is roughly 8 inches or 20 centimeters. Now I'd like to add more height to my cup, so we're going to do that without adding more width since it already fits so well. So from here, chain 2 and flip. And we're going to start off with our increase of 4 half double crochets into that first stitch. Our increase of 4 half double crochets are completed. From here, we're going to do our normal Suzette stitches that we've been doing this entire time. So we're going to skip 1 stitch, Suzette stitch into the next, making our way all the way down. But I'll meet everyone back when we have a total of 6 stitches left. Alright, so we are back. We've made our way down with our Suzette stitches, leaving our last 6 stitches. Now from here, what we're going to do is close off the row with just 1 single crochet because we do want this underarm portion to become nice and blunt. So right after we do our last Suzette stitch, we're all going to skip 1 stitch, and into the next insert with just 1 single crochet. And now this row is completed. We are going to leave those last 4 stitches alone. But as you guys can kind of see, it's starting to form a blunt end right here. Now the following row is going to be another Suzette stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work. Suzette stitch all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. Then into that last stitch, insert with just 1/2 double crochet. Then just continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we get the cup height that we'd like for the cup to be, keeping in mind that we are going to need to continue to leave the blunt end of our cup still staying at our underbust. Now after just this one additional row, this is the height of the cup that I want. So I am done, but if you guys want more height, continue like I said, and I'll meet everyone back right after an even number row. Now once we have the height that we want, I have a total of 16 rows now. I am going to insert my stitch marker into the top edge of this row just so I can keep track of where the exact point of my cup is. And now from here, we're all going to start to form our underarm portion. So since we all should have ended along the bottom portion, we're all going to chain 1 and flip. Now that we did our chain 1 and flipped our work, we're going to do our Suzette stitch all the way down, but leaving the last 10 stitches of the row. Then I'll meet you back. We are back and we are nearly finished with our first underarm row. We all should have left a total of 10 stitches. All we're going to do is close off the row with just 1 single crochet. So we're going to skip that following stitch and into the next, insert with 1 single crochet. Now our first underarm row is complete. Now we're going to leave our last 8 stitches. Then to get started on the following row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and do our Suzette stitches all the way back down, leaving the last 6 stitches. Then I will meet you back. Now we have made our way down with our second underarm row, leaving the last 6 stitches. Now we're going to close it off with a single crochet again. So skipping that following stitch, then into the next, insert with just 1 single crochet. We are going to leave the last 4 stitches, and from here we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So just to talk you guys through it, chain 1 and flip. Now as a refresher, our rows are pretty much going to be the same. So what we're going to do for the following row, since it would be an odd number row, is we're going to chain 1, flip our work. We're going to do our Suzette stitch all the way up until we have a total of 10 stitches left. Then once we have that last Suzette stitch set, we're going to skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. That row is completed. Then we should have a total of 8 stitches left over. Then chain 1, flip our work, and then since we're working our way back down towards the outer edge of the cup, we're going to do our Suzette stitch till we have 6 stitches left. Then when we have that last Suzette stitch set, skip 1 stitch, single crochet into the next, leaving the last 4 stitches along this back edge. Now we're going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows, making sure that we all end right after an odd number row so that we'll be along the top, and when our stitches is less than 10. Now it needs to be less than 10 because when it's less than 10, that number will be nearest to having a perfectly straight edge along this outer edge right here. And just as one more really quick tip, as you guys can see, it looks a little bit jagged along the top and along the bottom, but don't worry though, because that'll all even out once we do our single crochets. So continue to get those rows completed. Once we have that completed, I will meet everyone back because then we can single crochet along the outer edge of our front panel, then make one more front panel. We have just completed the underarm portion for our cup. Now I have a total of 19 rows. My last row that I have right here, like I said, needed to be less than 10 stitches. I have a total of 9 stitches and I did end along the top. Now what we're going to do from here is chain 1, flip our work, and work our way down, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach the bottom corner stitch right here. Now we're going to chain 1 and flip. Now making sure that we're working down towards the bottom, simply put 1 single crochet into every stitch until you reach this first corner right over here. Now that we've just made our way down with our single crochets, now we're just going to work into our following stitches that we have. So we're just going to find that following stitch and insert your first single crochet into there. We aren't going to be doing anything into the side rows just because we want this to be as clean as possible. So into that following single, single, single. Then into that following stitch right after that little edge that we have, a single. Just continue with 1 single crochet until we reach the bottom of the cup. So we are back and we have just completed single crocheting along the edge of our underarm portion. Now we're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut, then make one more cup that is exactly the same. The only difference is that once we make our way all the way down to the last row, do a chain up of 1 and cut so that we can do this single crochet row starting from the bottom, just so we can show the front of the single crochets once we seam everything together. Now we are back. We have just completed our first cup. that single crochet row is complete. We did do a chain up one and cut, and I did complete the majority of the second cup, which was done exactly the same way as the first one. But after that last underarm row, we did do a chain up one and cut. Now the only difference is that we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of our front panel's underarm and just put one single crochet into every stitch that we have until we reach that tail end. Now we should end up with the same amount of single crochets that we had along this edge, but once we reach this tail end, do a chain up one and cut. Then I'll meet everyone back so then we can get started on the back panel. So we are back. We have just completed both of our cups. Now what we're going to do from here is just take the two tail ends that we have and just tie them together. But don't tie this knot too tight because we are going to have to undo it so that we can wrap the bottom for just a little bit more security. Then what we're going to do from here to get started on the back panel's underarm portion is start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we did for our last single crochet row along the edges of our front panel. It should be an odd number for everyone. Mine was a total of 17 stitches, so for my back panel, I'm going to get started by making chain 17. So we are back and we have just made our chain for the back panel's underarm portion. Now we're going to do our Suzette stitch all the way down. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, the second chain from our hook, go ahead and insert, starting with our first Suzette stitch, which is just a single and double into that same first chain, skip a stitch and single and double into the next, and we're just going to continue on with this until we all have 2 chains left. We've just made our way all the way down with our first row. We all should have left the last 2 chains, and now we're going to close off the row with an increase. So yarn over, and into the last chain, we're going to insert with 3 half double crochets. So there's 1, same last chain with a second, and same last chain with a third. Now we should all have 2 more stitches, then chains made. Now the following row is just going to be a Suzette stitch row, so chain 1, flip our work, and do our Suzette stitches all the way down till we have 2 stitches left. Then at the end of the row, close off the row with 1 half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. So we are back. Our first 2 underarm rows are complete, and what we're going to do from here is simply repeat our first 2 underarm rows until we now have a portion that can reach from mid underarm all the way over to the front of our body, roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay. Now this portion is going to be our back panel, but we just want to make sure that we're measuring it correctly so that our strap isn't too far close to the neck and it's not too far out from the shoulder. So once we have this portion completed, I'll meet everyone back right after we complete an odd number row so that we'll be along the top, then we can work straight into the back width from there. So we are back. My underarm portion for my back panel is completed. Now I have a total of 9 rows. This width is just about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, or this height on the increase end is about 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now from here, we're just going to work with our Suzette stitches, working our way all the way across our back. No increases, no decreases, until we reach across our back over to where mid collarbone would be, because that's roughly where our strap would be. Now I'll meet everyone back right after an even number row that will be along the bottom. Then we can do our following underarm portion together from there. And we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that last underarm row as well, just so we know where the underarm starts and ends. So we are back, and the width of my back panel is complete. Now I have a total of 26 rows. My total width is just about 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters so far. Now we're going to do our underarm portion. Now what we're all going to do from here, since we all should have ended along the bottom, is do our following Suzette stitch row all the way up, leaving the last 4 stitches. Then I will meet you back. So we've made our way down, and our first underarm row is nearly complete. We should have all left the last 4 stitches. Now we're going to do a decrease of 3 double crochets. So we're all going to yarn over. We're going to skip that following stitch and inserting our hook into that next, which is the third to last. We're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, then yarn over, pull through 2, and we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that underarm row as well. Then our following row is going to be a Suzette stitch row with no increases, no decreases. So chain 1, flip our work, Suzette stitch all the way down, closing off the row with just 1 half double crochet. Then just to do our decrease together once more, at the end of that following row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, do our Suzette stitch all the way back up, leaving the last 4 stitches, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We are nearly completed with our first 3 underarm rows. We have made our way back up, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 3 doubles, same way that we did the first underarm row. So we should all have 4 stitches left, so just yarn over, skip that next stitch and into the next, pull through, next, pull through, then into that next, which should be the last, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through 4, leaving us with 2, then yarn over, pull through 2, and that's it. From here, continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first underarm portion that we started our back panel off with. Once we do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed the entirety of our back panel. Now I have a total of roughly 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now we're going to seam up our sides. So what we're all going to do is place our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that the single crochet row that we did for the edge of our front panel is faced along the inside because we want to show the pretty side once when everything is flipped right side out. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to do a single crochet seam all the way up. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then just find that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, single crochet. Again, next stitch into the front, insert, next stitch into the back, insert, single crochet, and we're just going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. Now everything is all seamed up. Now the next thing we're going to do is our waistband. So first thing first, we're going to untie our 2 front panels and we're going to insert our stitch markers just into that following stitch from that first row that we have from our front panel because that is going to be the tiny crossover that we have just for a little bit more security. So just to show you guys, we should all still have our first stitch marker into that first row that we have into the corners of our front panels. So I just inserted my following stitch markers into the side row that's right next to it. So just into that second row that we did for the front panel. I'm now going to take my first stitch markers away, and this little bit that I have right here for the second row is going to be my crossover from my front panel. So what we're going to do is flip our work over, then we're all going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the side row that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the bottom, and working our way across towards the front panel, we're going to do a single crochet row, alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Making sure we're working our way across our front panel first, we're all going to find our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top row and insert with 1 single crochet. Into that following side row, I'm going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1. Into that following side row with a second. From here, we're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row until we're worked into the side row that's before our stitch marker side row. Then I'll meet you back so we can do our wrap together. So we have just worked our way across our front panel and we're worked into the side row that's before our stitch marker side row. Now all we're going to do is just place our other front panel on top, then just continue on with our single crochet row. So we all should have ended with just 1 single crochet into that last side row. So into the first side row within the other front panel, we're going to insert. Into that following side row within the bottom front panel, we're going to insert with 2 single crochets because that is the next set of stitches in our stitch sequence. So there's 1. Into that same side row within the top front panel, same side row within the bottom front panel with a second single crochet. Then we should all have just 1 more side row left. So find that next side row within the top front panel, next side row within the bottom front panel. And now our 2 front panels should be overlapped. And from here, we're going to continue on with the same, alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way around now. Once we have made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space. Now, just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try your piece on. If it's a little too tight, we do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, we do some stitches with a tighter grip. So we are back. We have just completed our single crochet row along the entirety of the bottom. Now we're going to get started on our waistband. So what we're going to do is right after we slip stitch into that chain space is make a chain the length that we'd like for the waistband to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 6. So now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, then we're going to do a slip stitch row. So finding that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Again, following chain, insert, yarn over, pull through everything, and from here continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, remembering not to tug too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. And from here, we're just going to continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We've just made our way down with our first row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So into that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work, and now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So starting with that last stitch from our previous row, not working into that slip stitch into the base, we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch is back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Once more, next stitch is back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. From here, we're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back. We have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. That doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it up. We have just made our way all the way around with our waistband. Now we're going to seam everything together. Now it's going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so let's start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only in through that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop. Then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue this till we don't have any more stitches left. Then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then I'll meet everyone back so we can get started on our straps and our sleeves. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're now ready to get started on our strap / sleeve. So now what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the back panel, and we're going to do a single crochet row until we reach the top corner stitch of the front panel. So go ahead and insert your hook into the stitch marker side row within the back panel. Now working our way down towards the side seam, we are now going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 2. So go ahead and pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now into that first side row, we're going to insert with 2 single crochets. So go ahead and insert with 1, same side row with a second. Now into our following side row, this is mine right here, find that top loop, insert with 1. And that's it. We're going to continue to do that until we reach our side seam. So we are back. We have just made our way down with our single crochet row. We're now at our side seam. Now what we're going to do is have a middle stitch. So we're going to find the top loop of our side seam and insert with 1 single crochet. And we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then working our way up the front panel, we're simply going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. So finding our first stitch, this is mine right here. I'm going to reach my hook over, insert with a single, and put 1 single crochet into every stitch until we're worked into our last stitch that we have right here, right before our little ledge that we have. We've just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and we're now at this little ledge that we have right here. Now all we're going to do is find that next available stitch underneath that step, and just insert with a single crochet. That's going to help us even out that sharp edge that we have. From here, continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch until you reach the top corner stitch. If you guys have more ledges, then just continue to repeat 1 single crochet into every stitch until you reach the top corner. So we've just single crocheted all the way up until the top corner stitch. Now from here, we're just going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the halter top to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 14 inches or 36 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 55, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then repeat on the other side. So we are back. Now that our strap is complete, we're going to do a couple more straps, then we can go in with our sleeve detail. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up still. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel. Then we're going to make another chain because we are going to have another adjustable strap for a cute little detail that goes up and over our shoulder and ties at the top of the back corner. Now I went ahead and measured mine out, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 75, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. We have just completed the second strap for the front panel. Now we're going to do a strap for the back panel. Now since this long strap that we just did is going to fill up and over our shoulder and tie along the bottom back corner, this tie doesn't need to be quite as long because we don't want our bunny ears to be lopsided. So for this one, I'm actually just going to make a chain 35, then do a chain up 1 and cut. Repeat these 2 additional chains on this side, then I'll meet you guys back. So we are back. We have just completed our back strap. Now we're going to get started on our sleeve detail. So first things first, we're going to want to try on our piece. Then we're going to insert a stitch marker into any stitch within the front panel where we like the sleeve detail to connect within the front. In the back, it will be connected into the top corner stitch of the back panel. Now I inserted my stitch marker into the 5th stitch from my stitch marker, and I made sure to repeat that on the other side as well. Now once when our stitch marker is into our stitch, we're then going to insert our hook into our middle stitch marker stitch. Then we're going to single crochet, working our way up. Now it may be a little bit different depending on what side we're working on. Since I'm working on my left side, when it's completed, I'm going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch until I'm worked into my stitch marker stitch. If you guys are working on your right side, once when the whole piece is completed, you're probably working up the back first. Just put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you guys back because then we're going to make a chain that reaches around our arm to the other corner that we have. So now that we have made our way up and reached our stitch marker stitch, or if you're working up the back panel first, up into that corner stitch, we're now going to make a chain that reaches around our arm over to the other panel. Now, like I said, we're going to wrap it around, make sure that it reaches the top corner stitch of the back panel. But if you worked your way up the back panel first, same deal, around our arm until it reaches the stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to single crochet into the top corner stitch of the back panel and single crochet all the way down. So go ahead and flip your work. So into the top corner stitch of the back panel, go ahead and insert with 1 single crochet. Now that single crochet counts as a stitch and as a connection. Then from here, continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch. So we've just completed our first row. That first row will include our chain. Now we're going to get started on our ruffle detail. Now it is going to be our Suzette stitch, but since we want it to ruffle, we're just going to Suzette into every stitch / chain. So from where we're at, we're all going to chain 1. All we're going to do is into that first stitch, insert with 1 single and 1 double crochet. Then into that following stitch, 1 single and 1 double, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up and around. So into the chain as well. And I'll meet everyone back when we have just 1 stitch left. So now we have just made our way all the way around with our first Suzette stitch row. That was also kind of roughly. Now we're going to close off the row. Now we should all have just 1 stitch left. All we're going to do is insert into there with 1 half double crochet. Then to close off the row, we're going to slip stitch into that chain space that we made when we got started on the row. Then from here, this is going to be our 1 ruffle row. The rest of the rows from here are going to be normal Suzette stitch rows, no increases, no decreases. So just to get started, chain 1 and flip. So now that we flipped our work, we're going to do our first Suzette stitch into that first stitch. First stitch should be the top of that half double crochet that we used to close off the row. So insert with a single and a double. Skip that following stitch, which should be a double crochet from our previous row. Insert into the next with another Suzette stitch, so single and double, and that's it. From here, continue to skip a stitch, single and double into the next, making our way all the way around. When we have just 2 stitches left, 1 half double crochet is worked into the last stitch to close off the row. Slip stitch into that chain space and repeat this row till we get the total sleeve length that we'd like. Once we do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back and the length of our ruffle sleeve is complete. Now, not counting that first chain / single crochet row, I have a total of 7 rows. I did do a chain up 1 and cut right after that last row. Then from here, all I'm going to do is simply single crochet across the top of our chain just to sturdy it up a little bit. So to do that, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the same stitch that our ruffle sleeve is worked into. It doesn't matter if it's within the front or the back panel. We just want to make sure it's in the same stitch. Then simply put 1 single crochet into every chain, making our way all the way across. Then once we make our way all the way around, we're going to slip stitch into that same stitch that our sleeve is coming out of as well. Then do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. Now that our straps are into place, let's get started on the length. Flipping our work right side up, right side out, we're going to insert our hook into any side row along the bottom of our waistband. We're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then just put 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet, and that's pretty much it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Now again, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch, so just double check, making sure that it can fit nicely. Again, if it's a little too tight, you do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, you do some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I will meet you back. And just as a really quick tip, we should all have the same amount of stitches as side rows that we have for the waistband. So now that our single crochet row along the bottom of our waistband is completed, we're now going to make a chain, an even number chain, the length that we like for the bottom of this to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly mid-thigh, so I'm going to start by making a chain that is 60, and that's roughly 16 inches or 40 centimeters, but I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you, just to show you guys how we're going to be connecting it into the base. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to do a single crochet row back. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with 1 single crochet, then put 1 single crochet into every chain, making our way all the way down. So we've just made our way down with our first row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just to connect it, insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. And the row sequence for this bottom portion is going to be 1 single, 2 moss stitch rows. So to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base and flip our work. And now whenever we're starting a moss stitch row that starts along the base, we're always going to start it with a chain 1. First, skip that first stitch from our previous row. Remember, we're not counting any of those slip stitches into the base. Like I said, skip that first stitch and into the next. Insert with a single crochet. Again, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, and continue this to reach the end of the row. We are now at the end of our row 2. Now whenever we're starting a moss stitch row that starts along the outer edge, we're going to start with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as a stitch for the following row. So we're going to flip our work. We are going to skip that first stitch from our previous row, which should be a single crochet, then into the next, which is our chain space, insert with a single crochet. Now, just as a really quick tip, we should all have a total of 2 stitches so far for this row. That first is going to be that chain space. Second stitch is going to be that single crochet. Now, this last chain space, when we're doing our following rows, may collapse in on itself, so it can be really easy to overlook. Just make sure that we have the same amount of stitches per row since we aren't doing any increases or decreases. But all we're going to do right after that single crochet is chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our single crochet from our previous row, and into the next, which is our chain space. Insert with a single and continue this to reach the end of the row. We are back and our first 3 rows are completed. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now since we want this bottom portion to ruffle up just a little bit, how we're going to connect it now is we're going to connect it into that same stitch that our previous row is worked out of. So into this stitch, it will be occupied. We're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch worked into the base still doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base and repeat. Now remember that that slip stitch into the base does not count as a stitch as well. Now it is going to be a 3-row repeat, but since it is an odd number of rows, it may start along the outer edge like how our first one did, or it may start along the base like how this one's about to. Now just to do the following 3 rows, just so that we know how to do every variation of our rows, now that we have worked our way up to the following row, we're going to flip our work. And for our single crochet row, simply put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Our row 4 is now complete. Now to work our way up to our row 5, which is a moss stitch row, remember for any moss stitch row, when we're starting along the outer edge, we're going to chain 2. That first chain is our turning chain. Second chain is going to count as a stitch for the following row and flip our work. We are going to skip that first stitch from our previous row, single crochet into the next, which should give us 2 stitches so far for this row. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. We are back and our first 5 rows are completed. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now the same way that we connected our previous row into the base, we're going to find that same stitch that our previous rows worked out of, insert in through there with a slip stitch. Remember that slip stitch does not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, and flip our work. Now the 6th row is going to be a moss stitch row. So whenever we're starting a moss stitch row along the base, we're going to always start with a chain 1, skip a stitch, then into the next, which should be our chain space, insert with a single crochet, and we're just going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. Now we are back and a small sample size of our first 6 rows for the bottom of our piece is completed. From here, we are going to continue to repeat these 6 previous rows, connecting it into the base the same way that we just did, making our way all the way around. Now we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet everyone back so we can see it all together. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way around with the bottom portion of our piece. Now we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now all we're going to do is seam it up, and this seam is going to be the same single crochet seam that we did for the sides. So just to talk you guys through it, since I already have mine done, we're going to flip our work wrong side out, do our same single crochet seam till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. The bottom is all seamed up. Everything is pretty much all done. Now the last thing we have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.